Stay back, medic. Let the soldiers handle this. The Marine sergeant's dismissive words cut through the chaos of the firefight as enemy bullets shredded the air around Forward Operating Base Blackwater. Hospital corpsman, 3rd Class Paisley Cooper, crouched behind concrete barriers, supposedly just another Navy medic assigned to patch up Marines after the real warriors did their job. 26 years old, soft-spoken, always carrying medical supplies instead of extra ammunition, she'd spent 8 months at the base being treated like what everyone assumed she was, a non-combatant whose job was to save lives, not take them. But when 50 insurgents breached the perimeter at dawn, when Marines started falling faster than she could treat them, when the base's defenses crumbled under coordinated assault, Paisley did something that would shatter every assumption about the quiet medic who'd never talked about her past. She grabbed a fallen Marine's M4 rifle, and in the next 4 hours of sustained combat, proved that sometimes the most dangerous warrior on any battlefield is the one everybody thinks is just there to help. Because Paisley Cooper had never been just a medic. She'd been something else entirely, something the Navy had spent years training to perfection before reassigning her to save lives instead of ending them. And when the shooting started and Marines began dying, that something else came roaring back. Hospital corpsman, 3rd Class Paisley Cooper, had perfected the art of being invisible. At 26, with shoulder-length brown hair, she kept pulled back in a practical bun and hazel eyes that most people described as kind. She moved through Forward Operating Base Blackwater like a ghost, always present when needed, never drawing attention to herself, focused entirely on her job of keeping Marines alive. She'd been at Blackwater for 8 months, long enough for the Marines to grow comfortable with her quiet competence. She knew every man's medical history, could start an IV in a moving vehicle, and had a reputation for staying calm under pressure that bordered on the supernatural. When the shooting started, Doc Cooper, as they all called her, would appear with her medical bag, patch up the wounded, and disappear again without drama or fanfare. What the Marines didn't know was that Paisley Cooper was working very hard to be exactly what they expected, a medic whose only weapons were bandages and morphine, whose only mission was saving lives, whose presence in combat zones was purely humanitarian. They had no idea that before becoming a medic, she'd been something else entirely. The morning everything changed started like every other morning at Blackwater. Paisley was in the aid station, restocking supplies and reviewing the previous day's casualty reports when the first mortar round exploded in the compound courtyard. Boom! The windows rattled, medical supplies fell from shelves, emergency lighting kicked on as the main power grid took a hit. Incoming! Incoming! The base alarm began wailing as more mortars rained down, their distinctive whistle-boom sequence walking across the compound with deadly precision. Paisley grabbed her aid bag and ran toward the sound of explosions, following the training that had been drilled into every corpsman. Find the wounded, treat them, move on. Her job was to save lives, not fight wars. But as she emerged from the aid station, what she saw made her blood freeze. This wasn't the usual harassment fire Blackwater received from scattered insurgent groups. This was a coordinated assault by a professional force that had been planning this attack for months. Explosions erupted along the perimeter wire as sappers detonated charges they'd placed during the night. Enemy fighters poured through the gaps, at least 50 of them in military formation, carrying modern weapons and moving with tactical discipline. The Marines' outer defenses were being overrun. All personnel to defensive positions. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hayes, the base commander, was shouting orders over the intercom. This is not a drill. We are under direct assault. Paisley ran toward the sound of gunfire, where Marines were taking casualties. She found her first patient, Lance Corporal Tommy Rodriguez, behind an overturned Humvee, clutching his shoulder where an AK-47 round had torn through muscle and bone. "Doc!" Rodriguez's voice was tight with pain. "Thank God you're here." Paisley dropped beside him, her hands already moving with practiced efficiency. Pressure bandage on the wound, check for exit wound, assess for arterial damage. "You're going to be fine, Tommy." Clean through and through, missed the major vessels. As she worked, automatic weapons fire crackled around them. She could see Marines falling back from the outer perimeter, carrying their wounded, fighting a desperate defense against superior numbers. "Doc, we need you at the command post." Staff Sergeant Mike Torres appeared, limping badly from a leg wound. "Colonel Hayes is down." Paisley's medical training overrode everything else. The base commander wounded, Marines dying, her job clear and simple. She helped Rodriguez to covered position, then followed Torres toward the command post where the worst of the fighting was concentrated. But as they moved across the compound, enemy fighters who'd penetrated the defensive perimeter opened fire from multiple positions. Torres went down hard, and Paisley found herself alone in the middle of a kill zone, with bullets cracking past her head. She dove behind a concrete barrier as sustained automatic fire chewed up the ground where she'd been standing. Around her, Marines were pinned down, unable to move, unable to effectively return fire, slowly being whittled down by an enemy that held the tactical advantage. That's when she saw him. A young Marine, maybe 19, lying motionless 20 meters away. His M4 rifle lay beside him, along with several magazines of ammunition. Paisley's medical training screamed at her to reach the wounded Marine, to check his vitals, to provide treatment. But her tactical training the Marines didn't know she possessed, was telling her something different. She counted the enemy muzzle flashes. At least 12 fighters in this sector alone, all with clear fields of fire, all systematically eliminating the American defensive positions. The Marines were outnumbered, outgunned, and being overrun. In about 5 minutes, everyone in this compound would be dead. Paisley Cooper made a decision that would end 8 months of careful anonymity forever. She sprinted from cover, bullets whining past her, and dove beside the fallen Marine. She checked him quickly. No pulse, multiple gunshot wounds, but his weapon and ammunition were intact. She picked up his M4 rifle. The weight of the weapon in her hands awakened something that had been sleeping for 8 months. Muscle memory flooded back, thousands of hours of training, countless live-fire exercises, skills that had been drilled into her until they became instinctive. Paisley Cooper wasn't just a medic who'd learned basic weapons handling for self-defense. She was a former Navy SEAL who'd been medically reassigned after a training accident that the Navy had classified at the highest levels. She flicked the M4's selector switch to semi-automatic, chambered around, and rose from cover. The nearest enemy fighter was maybe 30 meters away, firing an AK-47 from behind a shipping container. He was focused on the Marines he was trying to kill and didn't notice the small woman in Navy fatigues who'd appeared with a rifle. Paisley's first shot took him center mass. He dropped without a sound. Her second shot eliminated a fighter who was trying to flank the Marine position from the right. Headshot at 40 meters, precise and professional. Her third shot dropped an enemy machine gunner who'd been pinning down half a squad of Marines behind a disabled vehicle. 3 shots, 3 kills, all in less than 10 seconds. Holy shit. One of the Marines, Corporal Danny Kim, stared at her from his covered position. "Doc, what the hell was that?" Paisley didn't answer. She was already moving, using cover and concealment with the fluid efficiency of someone who'd been trained in small unit tactics at the most advanced level. She wasn't thinking like a medic anymore. She was thinking like what she'd been before. A warrior trained to eliminate threats with surgical precision. The enemy fighters in this sector suddenly found themselves being hunted by someone they couldn't see, someone who moved like smoke and shot like death. One by one, they started dying. Paisley used every advantage the compound offered. She knew every corner, every hiding spot, every piece of cover, because she'd been walking these grounds for 8 months. But now she moved through them like a predator, not a healer. An enemy fighter tried to set up a rocket-propelled grenade for an attack on the command post. Paisley put a round through his chest from 70 meters away. 2 fighters attempted to coordinate a flanking maneuver on a group of pinned Marines. Paisley appeared behind them like a ghost, fired twice, and both men fell before they knew they were being hunted. A sniper in an elevated position was picking off Marines with methodical precision. Paisley spotted his muzzle flash, worked her way to an angle he couldn't cover, and eliminated him with a single shot through his scope. "Doc!" Staff Sergeant Torres' voice crackled over her radio. He'd reached a casualty collection point and was coordinating the wounded. Where are you? We've got Marines down and need medical attention. Paisley was reloading her rifle behind a concrete barrier, having just eliminated her 8th enemy fighter in the past 20 minutes. Torres, how many casualties do you have? 3 urgent surgical, 5 priority, maybe 8 walking wounded. Doc, we need you here now. Paisley looked around the compound. The enemy assault was beginning to falter as their fighters disappeared one by one, killed by an invisible shooter they couldn't locate. But Marines were dying too, and her medical training was screaming at her to drop the rifle and pick up her aid bag. She made a decision that perfectly captured who she really was. She would do both jobs simultaneously. Torres, I'm coming to you, but I need to finish something first. Give me 5 minutes. She spotted 3 enemy fighters attempting to regroup near the motor pool, trying to coordinate a final assault on the command post where Lieutenant Colonel Hayes was reportedly wounded. Paisley approached them with the silent efficiency of a hunter, using vehicles and buildings for concealment. She eliminated the first fighter with a shot to the head, then immediately shifted position as his comrades tried to locate her. The second fighter made the mistake of exposing himself while searching for her. She fired twice, once to the chest, once to the head. The third fighter was smarter, stayed behind cover, tried to wait her out. But Paisley had learned patience during her SEAL training, had spent hours in hide positions, waiting for the perfect shot. She worked her way around his position, came at him from an unexpected angle, and eliminated him with clinical precision. 11 enemy fighters dead, and the assault on Forward Operating Base Blackwater was effectively over. Now she could be a medic again. Paisley dropped the M4 rifle, grabbed her medical bag, and ran toward the casualty collection point where Marines were bleeding and dying and needed her skills to stay alive. For the next 3 hours, she worked with the focused intensity that had made her legendary among the Marines, starting IVs, controlling hemorrhages, managing airways, coordinating medical evacuations. She moved from casualty to casualty with calm efficiency, her hands steady, her voice reassuring, every action designed to save lives. None of the wounded Marines mentioned the 11 enemy bodies scattered around the compound, all killed with precision rifle fire. They were too grateful to be alive, too focused on their own injuries, too relieved that Doc Cooper was there to patch them up. It wasn't until the after-action review that anyone started asking questions. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, recovering from shrapnel wounds in his leg, was reviewing the tactical reports when he noticed something unusual in the casualty count. Sergeant Major, he called to the base's senior enlisted advisor, we count 11 enemy KIA in Sector 7, all from rifle fire, all precision shots. But I don't show any of our Marines in that sector during the heaviest fighting. Who made those kills? Sergeant Major Pete Jackson looked at the tactical map, cross-referenced it with the position reports from various Marine units, and came up empty. Sir, I'm not sure. Maybe we had someone detached from their unit, operating independently? Find out. 11 precision kills in a single sector is exceptional marksmanship. I want to know who was doing the shooting. The investigation took 2 days and led to an impossible conclusion. The only American in Sector 7 during the time period when the enemy fighters were eliminated had been Hospital Corpsman 3rd Class Paisley Cooper. Hayes called her to his office for what he expected to be a routine interview to clarify her observations during the attack. Corpsman Cooper, he began, I'm trying to piece together what happened in Sector 7 during the attack. You were treating casualties in that area, correct? Yes, sir. Multiple Marines with gunshot wounds, shrapnel injuries, and shock. Did you observe any of our personnel engaging enemy fighters in that sector? Paisley was quiet for a moment. She'd been dreading this conversation for 2 days, knowing that her 8 months of anonymity were about to end. Sir, may I ask why you're investigating Sector 7 specifically? Because we have 11 dead enemy fighters in that sector, all killed with precision rifle fire, and no Marines in our unit records show the kind of marksmanship training that could account for those shots. Hayes leaned forward. Corpsman Cooper, is there something about that engagement you haven't reported? Paisley took a deep breath. Sir, I need to tell you something about my background that's not in my personnel file. Go ahead. Before becoming a medic, I was something else. My previous assignment was classified, and when I was medically reassigned to Fleet Marine Force, the Navy decided it was better to let that assignment stay buried. Hayes's expression sharpened. What kind of assignment? Sir, I was a Navy SEAL. The office went dead silent. Hayes stared at her for a long moment, processing information that didn't compute with everything he thought he knew about his quiet, competent medic. You were a SEAL. Yes, sir. Team 8, based out of Little Creek. 3 years of active service before a training accident damaged my shoulder badly enough that I couldn't pass the physical requirements anymore. And the Navy reassigned you to be a medic. Yes, sir. Full medical training, then assignment to Fleet Marine Force. The Navy decided that my previous experience should be classified, that it would be disruptive if people knew. Hayes understood immediately. A female SEAL was still a sensitive topic in certain military circles, and having one embedded with Marines as a medic would have created exactly the kind of attention the Navy wanted to avoid. Corpsman Cooper, are you telling me that you eliminated 11 enemy fighters during the assault on this base? Yes, sir. I used a fallen Marine's weapon and engaged targets that posed immediate threats to American personnel. Hayes was quiet for a moment, absorbing the implications. Then he asked the question that had been bothering him since he'd first seen the tactical reports. How good were you as a SEAL? Sir, your marksmanship, your tactical skills. How good were you? Paisley met his eyes steadily. Sir, I graduated first in my SEAL class in marksmanship. I held the training command record for precision shooting at ranges up to 800 meters. My team leader once told me I was the most natural shooter he'd ever seen. And that's the skill set you used to eliminate 11 enemy fighters in 20 minutes. Yes, sir. Hayes leaned back in his chair, finally understanding what had happened during the assault. His quiet medic, the woman who'd spent 8 months being invisible, being helpful, being exactly what everyone expected, had single-handedly turned the tide of the battle by reverting to skills she'd been hiding the entire time. Corpsman Cooper, why didn't you tell us about your background when you arrived? Sir, the Navy felt it was better for unit cohesion if I was just another medic. And honestly, I wanted to be just another medic. After my injury, after leaving the SEAL teams, I wanted to focus on saving lives instead of taking them. But when the shooting started, you went back to your original training. Sir, Marines were dying. The base was being overrun. I had skills that could help, and I used them. Hayes nodded slowly. Corpsman Cooper, what you did saved this base. Your medical skills kept Marines alive, and your combat skills eliminated the threats that could have killed them. You essentially did 2 jobs simultaneously, and you did both of them at an elite level. Thank you, sir. But now I have a problem. I have a medic who's actually one of the most highly trained special operations personnel in the military, serving in a role that completely underutilizes her capabilities. And I have Marines who don't know that their medic is probably a better soldier than most of them. Paisley had been expecting this conversation. Sir, what are my options? Well, you can continue as you are, medic with a very interesting secret past, or you can consider other possibilities. Such as, Hayes pulled out a folder that had been sitting on his desk. Such as this. It's a request from Special Operations Command for experienced personnel to train the next generation of Special Operations medics. They want someone who understands both the medical side and the tactical side at the highest level. He slid the folder across the desk. They want you, Corpsman Cooper. Specifically, you. Apparently, word has gotten around about what happened here, and some very senior people are interested in your unique skill set. Paisley opened the folder and read the assignment description. It was exactly what she'd been trained for, combining medical expertise with special operations capabilities, teaching others how to save lives and eliminate threats in the most dangerous environments imaginable. Sir, if I take this assignment, I'll have to tell people about my background. There won't be any more hiding. No, there won't. You'll be Paisley Cooper, former SEAL, current medic, future instructor, the full package. Paisley thought about the past 8 months of being invisible, of hiding her true capabilities, of pretending to be less than she actually was. Then she thought about the Marines she'd saved, both medically and tactically, during the assault. "Sir, I accept the assignment." Hayes smiled. "Outstanding. There's just one more thing." "Sir, I'm recommending you for the Navy Cross. What you did during the assault, simultaneously providing medical care and eliminating enemy threats, is beyond exceptional. It's the kind of performance that deserves recognition." Paisley started to object. "Sir, I was just doing my job." "No, Corpsman Cooper. You were doing two jobs, both at the highest possible level, under the most dangerous circumstances imaginable. That's not routine. That's heroic." Word of Paisley's dual role during the assault spread through Forward Operating Base Blackwater within hours of her meeting with Lieutenant Colonel Hayes. The Marines' reactions ranged from amazement to awe to a kind of respectful fear. Doc's a SEAL? Lance Corporal Rodriguez, whose shoulder wound she'd treated during the battle, couldn't believe it. Like an actual Navy SEAL? "Not like a SEAL," Corporal Kim corrected. "She is a SEAL." Was a SEAL? Hell, I don't know the proper terminology. Staff Sergeant Torres, who'd been coordinating casualties while Paisley was eliminating threats, put it in perspective. "What I know is that she saved my life twice that day, once by patching up my leg wound and once by killing the bastards who were trying to finish me off." The Marines began looking at their quiet medic differently, not with less respect, but with a different kind of respect. She wasn't just the person who bandaged their wounds. She was someone who could outshoot most of them, outfight most of them, and still patch them up afterward. But Paisley worked hard to maintain the relationships she'd built over 8 months. During sick call, during routine medical visits, during the informal conversations that happened around the base, she remained the same person she'd always been, competent, caring, focused on keeping Marines healthy and alive. "Doc?" Rodriguez asked during a follow-up appointment for his shoulder. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure, Tommy." "During the fight, when you were, doing the other thing, did it feel weird, going back to that?" Paisley considered the question seriously. It felt necessary. When Marines are dying and you have skills that can prevent that, you use those skills. Doesn't matter whether it's starting an IV or eliminating a threat. But you chose to become a medic instead of staying in the teams. I chose to focus on saving lives instead of taking them. But that day, taking some lives was necessary to save others, so I did both." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "Doc, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "Knowing that you can do both, that you're not just someone we have to protect, but someone who can protect us, it makes me feel safer. Like, if shit hits the fan again, I know you've got our backs in every way possible." That conversation captured something important about how the Marines viewed their medics' dual capabilities. They didn't see her as a killer who could also heal. They saw her as a protector who used whatever skills were necessary to keep them alive. 3 weeks later, Paisley received orders to report to the Special Operations Command training facility in North Carolina. Her new assignment, developing curriculum for Special Operations medics, teaching them how to function as both healers and warriors in the most dangerous environments on Earth. On her last night at Forward Operating Base Blackwater, the Marines threw her a farewell party that was unlike anything she'd experienced. They presented her with a custom-made challenge coin that had a medical caduceus on one side and a seal trident on the other, with words around the edge, "Doc Cooper, healer and warrior." Lieutenant Colonel Hayes made a speech that brought the house down. "Corpsman Cooper came to us as a medic, and we thought that's all she was. Turns out we had a Navy SEAL living among us for 8 months, someone who could have killed every one of us in our sleep but instead chose to keep us alive and healthy. When the shooting started, she saved lives with both hands, one holding medical supplies, the other holding a rifle. She's living proof that the best warriors aren't just people who can fight. They're people who know what's worth fighting for." As Paisley prepared to leave the base where she'd spent 8 months hiding her true capabilities, Staff Sergeant Torres pulled her aside for a private conversation. "Doc, can I ask you one more question?" "Sure, Torres." "Why did you hide what you could do for so long? I mean, We would have respected the hell out of you if we'd known from the beginning." Paisley thought about that for a moment. "Torres, I needed to know that you respected me as a medic first. If you'd known I was a SEAL from the beginning, every time I treated you, every time I made a medical decision, you might have wondered if I was thinking like a warrior instead of a healer. I needed you to trust me with your lives in the medical sense before I could trust myself with your lives in the tactical sense." Torres nodded slowly. "And now? Now you know I can do both, and more importantly, I know I can do both without losing what makes me a good medic." As Paisley drove away from Forward Operating Base Blackwater the next morning, she reflected on 8 months of voluntary invisibility and 1 day of involuntary revelation. She'd proven something important to herself, that she could be a healer without losing her warrior skills, and she could be a warrior without losing her healer's heart. Her new assignment would put both sides of her training to use, teaching the next generation of special operations medics that they didn't have to choose between saving lives and taking lives. Sometimes they had to do both simultaneously. But most importantly, she'd learned that hiding your capabilities to make others comfortable was a luxury she could no longer afford. When Marines were dying and she had skills that could save them, those skills were meant to be used, not hidden. Paisley Cooper had spent 8 months being exactly what everyone expected, a quiet, competent medic whose only weapons were medical supplies. But when the shooting started and Marines began dying, she'd become what the situation demanded, a warrior healer who could eliminate threats with one hand and save lives with the other. The quiet medic who never spoke about her past had finally shown her true skills. And everyone who served with her was alive because she'd stopped hiding what she was capable of when it mattered most. Because sometimes the most dangerous person on any battlefield is the one everybody assumes is just there to help. Sometimes it's the medic with the gentle hands and the kind eyes who can put 11 rounds through 11 enemies without missing once. Sometimes it's the healer who remembers how to be a warrior exactly when warriors are needed most. And when you're a Marine in a firefight, that's exactly the kind of medic you want watching your back. Years later, when Paisley was training the next generation of special operations medics at the SOCOM facility, her students would ask her the same question over and over: how do you balance being a healer with being a warrior? Doesn't saving lives conflict with taking lives? Her answer never changed. Your job isn't to be a healer or a warrior. Your job is to be whatever your people need you to be in that moment. If they need you to stop bleeding, you stop bleeding. If they need you to stop bullets, you stop bullets. The enemy doesn't care if you're a medic. They'll kill you just the same. But your team does care, and they deserve someone who can keep them alive using every tool available. She would pause, remembering the weight of that M4 in her hands, remembering the Marines who'd lived because she'd stopped hiding her capabilities. The day I realized I could be both a healer and a protector simultaneously was the day I became truly effective at both jobs. Because saving lives isn't just about medical care. Sometimes it's about eliminating the threats trying to end those lives. One particular student, a young corpsman named Martinez, who reminded her of herself at that age, asked the question that got to the heart of everything. But weren't you afraid of becoming someone different? Of losing the part of yourself that wanted to heal? Paisley smiled, thinking about 8 months of voluntary invisibility and one morning when everything changed. Martinez, I didn't become someone different that day. I became someone complete. For 8 months, I'd been using half my training, hiding half my capabilities, being half of who I really was. When those Marines needed everything I had to give, I finally gave them everything. And that's when I realized that being a warrior doesn't make you less of a healer. It makes you a more effective one. She gestured to the training facility around them, where medics learn to save lives under the most dangerous conditions imaginable. Every person in this facility chose to be here because they want to keep warriors alive. But you can't keep someone alive if you're both dead. Sometimes the most medical thing you can do is eliminate the threat trying to kill your patient. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is be deadly on behalf of someone who can't be deadly for themselves. The students would nod, understanding dawning in their faces, recognizing the truth that Paisley had learned at Forward Operating Base Blackwater. That the best protectors aren't just people who can fight, but people who understand what's worth fighting for. And in the quiet moments between training sessions, Paisley would think about the Marines she'd served with, about the balance between healing and protecting, about the choice between safety and effectiveness. She'd chosen effectiveness. She'd chosen to be everything her people needed her to be. And because of that choice, they were all still alive to argue about whether medics should carry rifles or just medical supplies. The quiet medic had found her voice. The hidden warrior had revealed her skills. And somewhere, Marines were safer because she'd stopped apologizing for being dangerous. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.